Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. In my 15 minutes, I would like to summarize a little bit the boundary condition and the situation of countries with a longer time scale of implementing deep geological repository and draw some conclusion in terms of the needs of these countries. I am coming from Hungary. I'm Bálint Nos from Piram, from the Waste Management Organization of Hungary, and I will give you a viewpoint from a Hungarian angle. But before that, I would like to summarize some boundary conditions for these countries. And this is a list of myself from European countries with early stage of development, from Romania through Czech Republic, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Slovenia, and Croatia, and finally Hungary. And you can see that there are limited number, you well know it, there are only a limited number of units operated in these countries. What are the challenges derived from this? So the spent fuel is generated each of these countries, and the solution for the spent nuclear fuel or high-level waste in other backend solutions is the final disposal in deep geological repositories. It's well known. So we need some solution in terms of deep geological repository. But on the other hand, there are only a few operating units, so the unit cost and the unit efforts to implement this repository is quite high in terms of human resources, technical capabilities, and also financial resources. So this could be a common challenge for these countries. Some of these countries, considering the so-called dual-track approach and considering shared repositories and shared solutions, but due to the fact I have only 15 minutes, it is out of the scope of my speech. So the implementation of geological disposal facilities in these countries is in a very early stage. We saw this picture before, so you can see the planned operational time for geological repositories varies between 55 and 65 in these countries. So those countries are in a very early stage of development. So in the next part of my presentation, I will give you an example of Hungary. What is the situation in Hungary in this respect? But before that, I would like to emphasize that it is important in an early stage of development to have a conceptual plan for the disposal system and to define an implementation program with dedicated milestones. It is required also by the EC directive, but I would like to emphasize it is important. And it's a very small picture in the bottom part of the presentation. You can see the time schedule of the Hungarian program. It includes the site selection. After that, the construction of an underground research laboratory from 2032. The site confirmation period, site characterization, site confirmation in the underground research laboratory, start of the construction of the repository from 2055, and start of the operation from 2064. Why is it so important? It is also important to develop the connected R&D plan to support the implementation. And why is it important? Because we have to calculate the connected cost of this activity, and you can see the cost consequences of our national program, and the blue part, big part of this diagram shows the cost of the high-level waste disposal. And we have to collect enough money in our funds till the end of the lifetime of the nuclear power plant. And in the Hungarian case, in the currently existing 4 units, it lasts till 2037. So we have to collect enough money till 2037 in the fund for these long-term provisions. So we need the plan, implementation plan, a connected R&D plan, and cost calculation as well. So it's really needed in an early stage. And it is very important that these plans should be comprehensive, coherent, but also justified, because we have to defend these plans and the cost consequences towards the utilities. As I mentioned, Hungary currently is in an early stage. We are in a stage of a site selection process. We selected a formation, and we are carrying out a surface-based investigation program in the formation. And in the right-hand side, you can see a picture about our investigation area in the Boda Claystone Formation. It's an 87 square kilometers area which was defined. What are the boundary conditions of defining the R&D plan for our activities? We have to take into account the national framework, the national policy and national program of Hungary, meaning that our reference scenario for the backend is the open fuel cycle, so the direct disposal of spent nuclear fuel is considered. The final solution is a multi-barrier deep geological repository, and it is very important that according to the Hungarian legislative scheme, this R&D framework program have to be licensed by the Hungarian Atomic Energy Authority, and in the licensing procedure it is very important that we have to organize, or the authority has to organize, a public hearing, and we compiled this R&D framework program, and the public hearing was organized. You can see the picture of that. So all the affected people of the society could reflect their views on this R&D plan. What kind of assistance we get to compile this research and development framework program? A lot of time it was mentioned during this conference that this plan, this guide was developed, and we could really effectively use this plan, this guide to develop our R&D framework program. So it was really a useful tool for us, and also it was incorporated in the Hungarian legislation. Also we had a cooperation agreement, a bilateral cooperation agreement with ANDRA, and it was really useful in terms of defining the system boundary conditions, to identify the safety functions and other requirements of the different system elements, and also to link the planned research and development activities to this functional breakdown system. So as an early stage of development country, we got some support from an advanced country, and also derived some support from an international EC-funded cooperation, because the plan, this guide was produced in the frame of the SEC IGDT2 project. What are the topics of our research and development framework program? It is very much in line with the plan, this guide. There is nothing new in it, so it's very much linked to the multi-barrier system. So there are topics, issues with the waste inventory, with waste packaging and waste form, engineered barrier system, geological plus natural and societal environment of the facility. I would like to emphasize that during the public hearing, this aspect was really important. Most of the local people asked us to elaborate in details the societal evaluation of such a project. Also, there are some aspects of preliminary design and layout of the surface part and underground part of the facility, some things about the operation, methods of R&D and investigation models and evaluation, and last but not least, data management and long-term information preservation. I would like to emphasize that this R&D framework program only covers the surface-based investigation till the location of the underground research laboratory. And after that, we have to continue of developing a new R&D framework program for the URL, and as it was heard in the later stage of the facility evolution. What is the system of planning? This is a very complex picture, but I would like to summarize easily. So in the vertical, you can see the time, and this is the time span which is covered by the R&D framework program till the designation of the URL. In the first phase of the surface-based investigation, we plan general data acquisition in order to rank the candidate areas in the formation, and after the finish of this first phase, we have to compile a final investigation report and a preliminary safety case. I would like to emphasize that the aim in this phase of the safety case is not to calculate the doses, but to understand the system behavior, to understand the uncertainties, and evaluate with the sensitivity analysis of those, and prioritize the R&D activities, and develop the investigation plan for the next phase. And, if necessary, update the R&D framework program, which covers a broader context. There will be a second phase with a similar logic, and the aim is to designate and characterize the site. So the location of the URL will be done in this phase. And the system is the same. We have to do a preliminary safety case and update the R&D framework program if necessary. And the final part of the surface-based investigation is the preparation of the URL. And after this, an environmental protection licensing step will come, and also the site license application have to be compiled on the basis of a safety case for the site licensing. So this is the concept of our planning of R&D activities in Hungary. And finally, I would like to conclude my presentation with the last 2 slides. From this, what kind of needs arise of these countries with the early stage of development? We need some strategical assistance mainly from advanced countries. What are the lessons learned by these countries? And what is really important? In any publication, we can find what is working, but it is equally important to know what is not working. So not to use the same attempts to reach some targets which is not working. It's also important. Also, very important, some strategical assistance in terms of site selection, site characterization, strategy, criteria, methodology, and techniques. Using the safety case as a tool and the safety functions to develop a disposal system and to prioritize R&D activities. And in this early stage, it is very important to decide on the implementation strategy of the underground research laboratory, whether should it be a part of the future repository or not. And the final very important note from my side, this is from my experience. It is very important for the countries in the early stage of development to adapt the lessons learned by advanced country and not copy and paste. This means that sometimes the decision, the rationale and the evaluation of the pros and cons behind the decision is more important, and how to reach the decision is more important than the decision itself and the result itself, because we have to adapt these methodologies within our boundary conditions. We heard a lot about competence and knowledge management, and I would like to refer to Mr. Johan Andersson's presentation about the core competencies. I liked it very much, and this is very much in line with my first point. So the core competencies should be developed and maintained by the countries in early stage of development, partly in the side of the waste management organization, but also the research and development organizations, and also in the regulatory body and the technical support organizations. The collection of existing knowledge, meaning state of knowledge in different key topics, could be a sound basis for knowledge management, and also training modules and access to EU-wide R&D infrastructures, which is planned, could help in attracting young professionals to join the red waste arena. And I would like to show you again our time schedule for the implementation of the deep geological repository. So the educated and experienced workforce will be needed over generations. This means that when we together in this European arena define a topic for R&D now, and the result of this topic cannot be implemented or applied directly in our current stage of development of our program, but this topic is attractive to a young scientist and join to the field. It is really important to us because he or she will remain in the field and will be an expert in later stages of development and will be able to cooperate in the implementation of our goals. So I can say that independently of the stage of development, this kind of multilateral cooperation could help us to reach our goals. And in this respect, I can say that the EURAD project could assist these countries effectively to reach their goals. So with this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Dear Bálint, I want to say a few words because I appreciate very much your involvement at European level You have been together with Puram in RGDTP since the beginning, but not necessarily taking benefits of the Euratom program. And you've still been involved at European level in meetings and so on. So I hope that you're going to now start benefiting from the transfer of knowledge that the other programs have acquired until now. So it's my great pleasure to offer you this small present.